It's about well, it's really a love story, and it's a Malvern story because my grandmother wrote it at the invitation of my father when she came to visit us in Canada, and he said, well, maybe you could just jot a few facts down for the family. So instead of doing that, she went home and spent 2 years writing a novel and hoped she'd have a publisher and be a big bestseller. But we have published it and edited it. Bob and I have done that work because I inherited it in the box, this magical yellow box with this beautiful handwriting, lovely fine paper, 200 pages. So I was getting older. They sort of, my grandmother was older when she wrote it, and I thought, well, I need to put this together for my children and grandchildren because it was the legacy that I got. So I'm sort of handing that on. So she describes her courtship in London. He was a soldier. That was originally what she called the book. And so they had a kind of a rocky courtship, but they loved music and dancing, and eventually they did get together. Yeah, my grandfather was a soldier from the time he was 17 or 18. They all lied about their age, and it was a big adventure. So he did that, but then he had a time in civilian life, and he trained in gymnastics. Originally it was with wealthy men who had problems, and maybe some of them came here to take the cure with a cold bath, I don't know, but it was the Sanders Institute, so he trained for them. And then he thought he'd like a job in school, and he found that this job was available and came up to be interviewed and was told, yes, start next month. This was 1910 in March. And so he went home happily to tell his wife, my grandmother Grace, and said, there's a couple of catches, I'm afraid. Let's sit down and have a cup of tea. So she said, well, they want you to be the cook. There's no job for me unless you're the cook. And she said, I've never cooked for anybody, Teddy, except you. But she said, well, I guess I could try, but what about the baby? Well, that's the other thing. The baby would have to be taken care of by somebody to free you up to do your job. So, of course, my dad, being a few months old, this was very sad for her to leave her baby. But she did. They arranged, long story, that none of the relatives would do it, so they found somebody through a church connection to have the baby, but quite a long way away, in Wallingford. We looked it up, so they couldn't just pop in. So she came ahead. She had to start her job right away. So the story sort of goes on at the Malvern section about when she arrived. And
so what was this room for then? Was this the...
I'm imagining when my grandmother arrived and she had to be the matron, that, and she said there were highly polished floors, which there probably...
There probably is under there.
Picture this room is where she lived.
Yeah.
See, Mrs. Boyle. Yeah. So this is, chapter's called Grace's Work Begins. So she would have arrived at Malvern Station and carrying her small suitcase, following minutely the directions given her by Ted. Grace at last reached her destination, Priory School. Yes, here was a small door inset, which he said she must open, step over the partition, and find herself in a wide drive which led to the servants' quarters. She hesitated for a few moments and looked about her. Why hadn't he told her about these great hills, such a prominent feature of the town? The sun had set behind them, and they stood out dark and towering, silhouetted against the skyline. Bracing herself, Grace opened the small door and saw, about 50 yards from her, a large, beautiful house. Now through the outer gate, she could see off to the left another building, which she learned later was the gymnasium. She would soon come to the house door, which Ted said she must open and walk straight in. Inside this door was another, which was partly open. She could hear voices when she knocked. Somebody immediately called, "Come in." Grace entered a large room. Down the center was a long table, at which sat 6 or 7 women dressed in servants' clothes. They were apparently discussing an absorbing topic as they had their tea. Grace learned later that she had been the subject of their conversation. All voices ceased as they saw her. And then it goes on, "Are you the new cook?" And she's thinking, "Cook? Well, yes, I guess I am." And she said, "Well, please just sit here, and Mrs. Boyle will come and see you." And that's when I pictured her going into the elbow room, possibly. And she said, well, you're to sleep upstairs with a couple of the young women there, up several flights of stairs. And she was very tired and scared and sad, I think.